You know, the beauty about week one of college football is you have all this preseason talk, a little bit of a Pac-Man there. You have all this preseason talk. You have all the depth charts out in front of you, the hypothetical depth charts. You have all the preseason power rankings, the calculations, all the on-paper analysis and basing things off of, well, from this coach coming from here and this player coming from here with the portal and these starters coming back and all this different stuff. And then you get to the game and you watch the game and the game unfolds in a way that you feel is familiar, but then there are things that come completely out of left field or that are completely unexpected, like a pie in your face that you didn't see coming. And that was a little bit of Penn State, West Virginia yesterday, especially to those who bought in to West Virginia. Like I said, in the preseason, the beauty about week one is there's all that talk, and then you see if the talk is real. And with West Virginia, maybe it's real in relationship to winning the Big Ten and simply making the college football playoff or winning 9 games again. It's not real in terms of being a great team, of being a program, a coaching staff, and a roster who is capable of punching so far above their weight class that they can knock off a team in Penn State who's one of the best programs and teams in the Big Ten, not just this year, but historically. If you want a week one overreaction, Penn State's winning the Big Ten, and they're probably the team in the Big Ten that has the best chance of winning it all. But that's a huge week one overreaction. Ohio State and Oregon still have more talent. They were ranked higher, and rightfully so, in the preseason. Michigan's defense is legit. But Penn State had the most impressive performance out of all of the teams in the Big Ten on Saturday. And West Virginia, while they played a sloppy game, and Neil Brown talked about that, isn't that who and what West Virginia football is anyway? You have Garrett Green, who takes deep shots and scrambles. You have an offensive line that's good, that's physical, and the rushing attack is anywhere from good to great. But as we saw last season against Penn State in their week one opener, it's a good, great run offense, but because of the inconsistencies at quarterback, a defense that is not among the nation's top 25, not among the good Power 4 defenses, and an O-line that, again, as I said, it's good to great, but it's not a Joe Moore Award caliber O-line. So with inconsistencies at quarterback, you're not going to be running for 6, 7, 8 yards per pop, especially against a Penn State defense that returned 5 contributing defensive tackles, a All-American linebacker who moved to defensive end, and I don't know the exact number, but a few contributing defensive ends as well. Linebacker Tony Roas, who had a good game, and Kobe King. Penn State, you knew, was going to have an elite run defense. You knew their front was going to be elite. The question defensively was a little bit in the secondary, and they did well there too. And offensively, oh boy, they averaged well over 10 yards per pass against a West Virginia secondary that some were touting as a good unit. My goodness. Harrison Wallace, 5 receptions, 117 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. And if you want to think about game day coaching and the fact that James Franklin has, in big games, struggled mightily at in-game coaching, and he has, whether you want to say peed his pants, or just fallen over and choke, or tripped down the stairs, took a nice fall down the stairs. He didn't do that in this game. And I think a big reason why that is, and this isn't meant to be disrespectful, is the fact that this wasn't a big game for Penn State. This was a big game for West Virginia. This was not a big game for Penn State. Penn State was far more talented than the Mountaineers. They had a superior quarterback. They had the superior receivers, superior tight end, better offensive line, better defensive line, linebackers, secondary players, specialty. They were better than West Virginia in every friggin' way, minus home field advantage. If this was a home game for Penn State, it could have been like a 41-12, 48-12 blowout. It could have been a humiliating bludgeoning. And compare this performance to last year's performance from Penn State against West Virginia. Penn State this year on the road had 457 total yards, a touchdown, 21 first downs, 30 minutes and 25 seconds of possession. Last year, Penn State had 478 total yards, no turnovers, 27 first downs, and they had 28 minutes and 44 seconds of possession. They did score 4 more points. They allowed 3 less points this season and last season. Overall, the scoring margin, 34-12, 38-15. It's 23 versus 22 points. And the fact that West Virginia and Penn State both returned a lot of their production and home field advantage flipped, and the score of the game was similar. And really, Penn State had a more impressive performance this year with it being on the road. You factor in the weather delay that slows things down. And they were more efficient. The score was 20-6 at halftime. At one point, it was 27-6 in the third quarter. Penn State's offense looked far better. The defense looked similar despite the loss of Manny Diaz and the loss of several talented secondary players and 2 NFL defensive ends. It was just a throttling by Penn State. James Franklin coaching circles around Neil Brown. Andy Kotelnicki drew up a better game plan and out-schemed Chad Scott. And Tom Allen's defense looks pretty similar to Manny Diaz's in terms of their output and the fact that they will hold you to minimal gains and really, really dominate you on the lines of scrimmage. I mean, West Virginia, they had a 3 out of 4 fourth down efficiency. One of those fourth down conversions was very poorly called by the refs, who, look, on both sides, did not do a good job yesterday. But the fact that West Virginia has Wyatt Millam, and they have a great offensive line, and Penn State was able to repeatedly stonewall them and also hold Garrett Green to single digits in rushing yards is just, again, very, very impressive performance by Penn State all around. Before we resume this video, I want you to like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, and share this video around. That way you can boost our presence in the algorithm. You can help us reach 20,000 subscribers, where we will be doing a giveaway. And you can help contribute and grow this awesome community that is College Football with Sam. Again, like the video and click the share button, subscribe button, and notification bell, especially that notification bell, so that you can get notified when we release new college football content and analysis. We are the best Big Ten football channel on YouTube, and as always, we try and cover all of college football with a focus on the Big Ten, but that doesn't mean we ignore the other valuable teams and conferences of this sport. And comment your reaction to this game down below. I want to hear your perception on this game, because it's very likely, given that I have to cover all these different games, and many of you are just fans who only care about your team, that you saw something or you picked up on something that I did not. But let's continue. And I want to get first into West Virginia, because we saved the best for last on this channel, and Penn State was the best. West Virginia was clearly overrated, overvalued, whatever you want to call it. The team that I watched take the field against Penn State was, again, as I mentioned, inferior in every way. They were not as tough. They were not as physical. They were not as fast. They were not as well coached. They were not organized. They were not schemed to the same level or coached up to the same level that Penn State's players were. Here's an example of this. Harrison Wallace III did very well. 5 receptions, 117 yards, 2 touchdowns, 23.4 average yards per reception. Very good game. And I got some insider intel in the preseason, late in the preseason, that he was emerging as Penn State's wide receiver one. And that somewhat surprised me because in 2022 and 2023, he never had more than 20 receptions, never had more than 250 yards, and he only had one receiving touchdown in 22, no receiving touchdowns in 2023. He is not, from what I understand as of right now, a Jahan Dotson, a Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson type player. Or if you want to go to the new Big Ten members, not Troy Franklin or Roma Dunze, in that ballpark, again, from what I understand. But he came out, and because of Kotelnicki, scheming wide open routes at every level, the short, intermediate, and deep levels, and attacking every position of the field, he took advantage. He broke out. He's clearly better than I and many others thought that he was. And he has good coaching that puts him in a position to be that good and play at the best level that he can on a given Saturday. For West Virginia, Garrett Green is a player who is not Lamar Jackson, not Patrick Mahomes. He's not J.J. McCarthy or Jalen Milroe or Carson Beck, not even Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders or many other quarterbacks. He's not a top 10, top 15, top 20 QB, not even top 25. But he has enough talent to where put him in a position to win. Develop him. Bring him forward. And West Virginia did that to a certain degree last year. That's why they made it so Garrett Green primarily ran the ball and took deep shots. It was decent coaching. But you did not see him take a step forward in this game where he had a 37.1 QBR. And he did not do a good job of taking care of the football. He struggled, not just in completing deep passes, but in throwing short, intermediate. He honestly looked like he did for a lot of last season, and similar to how Jalen Milroe looked in early 2023. Except he only ran for 5 yards because Penn State had 2 sacks. They did a very good job of containing him and were conscious of containing him. And in total, West Virginia only had 85 rushing yards. They didn't even hit triple digits in rushing yards. And this is a rushing offense that last season ran for over 200 yards per game. And against Penn State last year, they had 146 rushing yards. And really, to circle back to that comparison last season between Penn State and West Virginia, Penn State had a similar output as they did last season. They were just much more efficient at gaining the yards and the points. West Virginia had less yards, and the only reason they were close and over the 200-yard mark is when the game was pretty much already over, they finally put together a drive, and they scored, and then they went for 2. I don't know why they went for 2, because kick the extra point and you're within 14 points instead of risking it being a 15-point game. That's sometimes why, analytics are sometimes just analytics. Just kick the field goal. It's the same thing with some of those fourth down conversions. One where West Virginia failed, another where they nearly failed. Just take the points. Take them. And put yourselves in a position to win. And I don't think West Virginia did that. And maybe them being as aggressive as they were was the right call. But I felt like their coaching staff didn't do a good job. Their players consequentially didn't do a very good job. And again, this is all in reference to a Penn State team that is among college football's elite potentially, and is certainly a near elite team. I think certainly a top 10, top 8, top 6, perhaps even top 5 team as of right now. I had them ranked number 5 in my preseason top 25 from a power rankings angle. I think there's a pretty good chance, after I look over everything, they'll be even higher than that, if not the exact same, but with a little more respect and trust added to this team. My prediction was 41-13, and I thought it would be close until the fourth quarter. I was pretty dead on. It was 34-12. It was not as close as I expected it to be through a half and 3 quarters, but it was still not really out of West Virginia's control totally until, whether you want to argue it was the third quarter or the fourth quarter, after Penn State punched in with Tyler Warren from Bo Pribula. I think that, look, West Virginia was limited. Penn State had a higher ceiling. And take on the fact that Penn State has improved on offense due to Andy Kotelnicki, and they returned a lot of production. That's why Penn State won this game. I thought it was going to be pretty obvious from the get-go that Penn State was going to win this game and win big. Not everyone thought that way, and maybe it could have gone differently, but I think you play this game 10 times over, Penn State wins 10 out of every 10. I mean, I think that the angle that West Virginia was going to win this game was wrong from the start, and I think Saturday proved that. And I don't exactly know where that came from, because I said West Virginia had a path to win because of their rushing offense and some pieces they had on defense and tight end Cole Taylor and Garrett Green's legs, but that's just a path to win. In the same way that, you know, most teams have a path to win even against the best of the best teams. Think about Georgia last year playing Missouri, or maybe playing Ole Miss. Like, Missouri and Ole Miss had paths to win against Georgia last year, but they didn't, and especially in the case of Ole Miss, in hindsight, they were never going to beat Georgia without a super flukish game. And Penn State showed with their coaching that they are not going to be defeated by a team like West Virginia. A team that is undisciplined, that turns over the football, that cannot consistently throw, and more importantly, whose defense can't stop explosive plays, and they can't consistently hold you to punts, and they can't be relied upon to carry you. West Virginia does not have a defense that I would even say is top 20, top 25, top 30, let alone top 10. They need their offense to be consistent and to control the clock and to move the ball in order to even have a chance at winning. And the ironic thing here is West Virginia at one point had a massive TOP advantage, but Penn State finished with about 50 seconds extra of possession. That's due to the fact that Penn State, from their first 3 touchdown drives, scored in under 4 minutes. And their 4th touchdown drive was under 5 minutes. Their 5th touchdown drive was under 4 minutes. Penn State was able to score quickly, whether it was through the run or, more importantly, the pass. They can actually execute a 2-minute drill now, and that's because of Andy Kotelnicki. Scheme and coaching matter, and the reason I highlight this in relationship to Penn State and talking about the winner of this game, we saved the best for last on this channel again, is because people always talk about recruiting, and sometimes it's even boiled down to only talking about the players. Like, yeah, recruiting matters, but what about this player who was a 3-star but broke out? Like, you have to factor in how they perform in college, not just their high school ranking. You have to do both of those, but you also have to factor in coaching and scheming, which also factor in development. And those things matter, and that is the big reason, on top of superior talent, as to why Penn State won. They averaged, listen to this, 7.6 yards per play. That's very impressive. And given Penn State's schedule, where their toughest games outside of Ohio State will probably be USC on the road and Wisconsin on the road, they could average 7.6 yards per play, or around that, like maybe a yard less or a yard and a half less or more, in all 11 of their games outside of the Ohio State game. And even then, you never know. Ohio State's defense is very good, but Penn State's offense looked like it has a high-octane level of juice to it that we didn't see last season. Last season, Penn State's offense was top 15, top 20 in scoring, but against Michigan and Ohio State, they didn't do much. And while Penn State didn't play a Michigan or Ohio State caliber team yesterday, they played a good team, and a team who last year they had 65 plays against. 65 plays against. And in total, they averaged 7.4 yards per play against last season in Beaver Stadium in a night game, and overall, they improved upon their performance in efficiency, in creating explosive plays, in having better QB play. Last year, Aller went 21 of 29 for 325 yards, 3 touchdowns, 11.2 yards per pass. So, similar passing performance compared to last year, but what I will say is, last year, Aller was not as aware in the pocket as he is this year. He was less consistent. Like, last season, West Virginia had an inferior secondary compared to this unit. They did. And there were some fluke plays, like I remember his long pass to Keandre Lambert-Smith, I think was like, whether it was a busted coverage or a one-on-one that just went Penn State's way, I forget. But Penn State is just so much better and more efficient offensively than they were last year. And maybe that's an overreaction on my part, but I don't think so, because they averaged more yards per play. Aller this season, went 11 of 17 for 216 against West Virginia, 3 touchdowns, and most importantly, he had 44 scrambling yards. Like I said earlier, he's better in the pocket than he was last year. There were several times where the play broke down and he just took off and run and converted third downs. Penn State was 5 of 11 on third down, 1 of 1 on fourth down. They had 21 first downs again. And also they had 8 penalties for 60 yards. Penn State was not a very disciplined team, particularly on the defensive line, where they constantly were caught offsides, trying to jump, and they got caught. I think it was like 4 or 5 offside penalties, I do believe, somewhere around that ballpark. And the defensive line still had 2 sacks, 6 TFLs. They held West Virginia to 2.3 yards per carry, 1 rushing touchdown, and 85 rushing yards in 37 attempts. So whether you want to look at Zane Durant or deny Dennis Sutton or Abdul Carter or any of the players that Penn State has on defense, you could look at Penn State's defense, especially that D-line or linebacker core, maybe Tony Roas, as the MVP in a certain way. But that's just in a certain way. I think no matter what, you have to look at Drew Aller and say he's the game MVP. He was 11 of 17 for 216 yards, 3 touchdowns, 44 rushing yards, wasn't sacked a single time, was nearly sacked at times, but he always eluded the pocket. It looked like he lost weight, gained muscle. He's faster and less clumsy than he was last season. Doesn't look like he could be a true dual threat quarterback, but he certainly is more nimble and provides more of a threat on the ground than he did last year. And he helped open up the offense. He was throwing dots across the field. And while it is game 1, and I don't want to overreact, I'm not going to say Drew Aller's a top 10 quarterback, may not even be top 15. He was only fringe top 25 last year. And I think the improvements that we see have seen in this game are significant enough to where I can say confidently this offense is taking a step forward. Aller has taken a step forward. He gives his team a better chance to win than he did last year. He does a better job of raising the ceiling and floor of his team than he did in 2023 in his first year as the starter. I like what I'm seeing out of Aller. I like what I'm seeing out of Andy Kotelnicki. Katron Allen had a tough game, 10 carries for 20 yards, but Nicholas Singleton had 13 carries for 114 yards, had a long of 40, 8.8 yards per carry and a rushing touchdown. It looks like Singleton is back to his 2022 self, but again, we'll have to wait and see. This is a great performance by Penn State, a poor performance by West Virginia, and as of what I said about a week 1 overreaction for Penn State being the best team in the Big Ten, and factoring that in with my preseason prediction that James Franklin will finally get a big win and finally beat Ohio State this year, we'll just have to wait and see, but I think yesterday provided some optimism for that belief. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Remember to like, subscribe, click the notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. Thank you to my Patreon members for sponsoring this video and channel. Thanks to Crash2488 and Brasco Rascal for being Heisman members at $25 a month. If you sign up as a Heisman member for 6 months, you get free signed College Football with Sam merchandise, and you also get access to Patreon live streams where I will do play-by-play and color commentary starting this week. I'll be doing Colorado versus Nebraska on my Patreon page. You also get access to that as an All-American member. You just don't get the free signed merchandise at the end of 6 months membership. That's $10 a month. And thank you to Chris Lane, Connor Little, OH, Ismar, and Tyler Nye for being members of that club. And for all conference members, it's $5 a month just to support the channel and have your name shouted out. Thanks to John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, and Janisha Cockrell for being a part of the all-conference membership. Thanks to all of you who are on Patreon, especially, and also for watching this video, for supporting this channel. We're going to kick butt this season. Have a great day, guys. And also check out my merchandise store if you want to get merch, regardless of Heisman membership or not. The link to that and the Patreon page are in the description or in the pinned comment. Have a fantastic day, guys, and I will see you soon. Go Nittany Lions.